Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's condescending to suggest to this committee that law enforcement who operate their jobs under the color of authority should and can be compared to any other employee group across the board. That's a sophomore argument, and I think we need better. If we're going to engage in meaningful debate to come up with policies that are relevant and helpful to all of California, then we all need to come to the table with relevant debate, and that's not it. Conduct that is entirely lawful and within reason, well, I would argue that perhaps that is in the eye of the beholder, and that that's the absolute crux of the issue at hand. Conduct that is entirely lawful and within reason. And tragically, I think it's our collective experience that bias, both explicit and implicit, impacts one's perception of conduct that is within reason. And until we all collectively accept that to be true, we will never find a solution. I think that you are completely and utterly out of touch with the realities of how those you are representing are perceived by major segments of California. And you are not going to be able to continue to lobby your way out of it. This bill, SB 1421, that I have the pleasure of supporting Senator Skinner as co-author, has bipartisan co-authorship. It is a much more limited than prior versions of the bill that would have returned California to the days prior to limitations imposed in 2006. There are a number of restrictions placed on the information that is disclosed, including redaction of personal information of officers, their families, and witnesses. So the ongoing debate about how officers have to be protected to empower them to do their job is not a viable argument. If you don't understand that we have a fundamental problem with policing in this country, then we have a bigger problem than I could imagine. And law enforcement is going to have to wake up and come to grips with how they are perceived, their bias, and the fact that the greater community is no longer going to stand idly by and not have meaningful public policy conversations about police officer Bill of Rights and all of the other protections that have been put in place by legislative bodies like these over the years. Those days are over, fundamentally. And if you don't get that, you're not representing the people who are putting their lives on the line every day, who are sworn officers. If you don't get that as their representatives here, then you're not representing them fairly, fundamentally. I'm proud to support the bill. I appreciate the comments that they are willing to continue to engage, because I think based on the number of reforms we've put in place, I think law enforcement representatives understand that they're going to have to, because we have a legislature and a governor that does get the fact that we have a problem in this state and this country, and we will continue to take action. There have been bills that you all have successfully, once been passed and signed into law, have been overturned in the courts, but we'll keep coming back because we have to, because there are major segments of this state who are victims of implicit and explicit bias every day. Perhaps the next bill needs to be mandatory implicit bias testing for all sworn officers and those who represent them in the halls of the legislature. Maybe we begin there. We have to have frank, meaningful conversations and real policy discussions, and not sophomoric arguments that you know have no bearing on the real policy in question. I'll be supporting the bill today.
Skinner?
Aye.
Skinner, aye. Anderson? Bradford? Aye. Bradford, aye. Jackson?
Aye.
Jackson, aye. Mitchell? Aye. Mitchell, aye. Stone? Stone, no. Wiener? Aye. Wiener, aye.